Patricia Chen knelt on the cold marble floor of the penthouse bathroom in Atherton, California, her knees aching despite the foam pad beneath them. The October afternoon light slanted through the floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating every water spot, every streak, every imperfection she had been hired to eliminate. She scrubbed at a stubborn calcium deposit near the base of the platinum-finished bathtub faucet, her shoulders burning from 3 hours of nonstop cleaning. The hair tie on her wrist snapped without warning. She felt it give way, the cheap elastic finally surrendering after months of use, and suddenly her thick mass of dark curls tumbled forward into her face, obscuring her vision. A few strands stuck to her lip gloss. Others fell into the bucket of cleaning solution beside her. "Damn it," she muttered under her breath, sitting back on her heels. She pushed the hair back with both hands, tucking it behind her ears, but it immediately fell forward again. With a frustrated sigh, she reached into the front pocket of her cleaning apron and pulled out her spare scrunchie, a simple black velvet one she had bought from a drugstore 3-pack. Without thinking, operating purely on muscle memory from 26 years of managing unruly hair, Patricia gathered all of it up with both hands. She tilted her head slightly to the side, the gesture unconsciously graceful, elongating the line of her neck. In one smooth, practiced motion, she twisted the mass of curls and wrapped the scrunchie around it once, twice, 3 times, creating a high, messy bun that sat at the crown of her head. The movement exposed the elegant curve of her neck and the delicate slope of her shoulders beneath the simple gray t-shirt she wore under her apron. A few loose tendrils escaped to frame her face, softening the practical style into something almost romantic. She had no idea Dong-Soo Kwon was standing in the doorway. He had come upstairs to grab files from his home office, documents related to a shipping contract negotiation that needed his signature before the 5 o'clock courier pickup. His mind had been occupied with freight rates and customs regulations, the same calculating focus that had made him a formidable force in international logistics. He had not expected anyone to be in the private wing of the penthouse. The cleaning service usually finished by 2, and it was nearly 4:30. But something made him stop mid-step in the hallway. A flash of movement through the open bathroom door, the unconscious grace of a simple, everyday gesture. He watched, frozen, as she gathered her hair up. The way her neck arched, like a dancer's, revealing skin he had never noticed before. The way her collarbones caught the afternoon light, creating shadows he suddenly wanted to trace with his fingers. The graceful, unconscious femininity of such a simple gesture, something she had probably done thousands of times without a second thought, hit him like a physical blow. Dong-Soo Kwon controlled billion-dollar international shipping operations across 3 continents. He commanded respect from dangerous people with a single look. He had negotiated with Chinese trade officials, Russian oligarchs, and Japanese corporate sharks without ever showing a crack in his composure. He had walked away from his family's criminal legacy and built a legitimate empire through sheer will and strategic brilliance. But watching this woman tie her hair up made him forget his own name. His mind went completely blank. His carefully maintained composure shattered like glass. His heart, which he had trained to remain steady through hostile takeovers and veiled death threats, began to pound against his ribs. He stood there, one hand still raised from where he had been about to check his watch, and simply stared. Patricia turned to reach for her scrub brush and nearly jumped out of her skin when she saw him standing there. A small gasp escaped her lips, and her hand flew to her chest. "Mr. Kwon," she scrambled to her feet, almost knocking over the bucket of cleaning supplies in her haste. Sudsy water sloshed dangerously close to the rim. "I'm so sorry, I didn't know you were home yet. I'll finish up quickly and get out of your way." He said nothing, just kept staring at her with an expression she could not read. His dark eyes were intense, unblinking, focused on her with a concentration that made her skin feel too warm. His jaw was set in a hard line, and she noticed his hands were shoved deep in his pockets, his shoulders tense beneath his perfectly tailored charcoal suit. The silence stretched between them, awkward and charged with something Patricia did not understand. She had cleaned this penthouse twice a week for 6 weeks now, and had barely exchanged more than a dozen words with him. He was always polite but distant, treating her like a piece of furniture that happened to move around his space. This was different. This was intense. "Mr. Kwon," she ventured, when the silence became unbearable. "Is everything okay? Did I miss something? I can go back over." "No." His voice came out rougher than he intended. He cleared his throat sharply, looked away from her as if the sight of her face burned him, and walked past her without another word. She heard his footsteps retreat down the hallway, heard a door close firmly, heard the muffled sound of him speaking rapidly in Korean on the phone. Patricia stood there in the bathroom, one hand still clutching the scrub brush, her heart hammering in her chest for reasons she could not explain. Her reflection in the massive mirror showed her flushed cheeks, her wide eyes, the messy bun she had thrown her hair into without thinking. What the hell just happened? She waited a full minute before her hands stopped shaking enough to go back to cleaning. But for the rest of her shift, she could not shake the feeling of his eyes on her, or the strange heat that had passed between them in that moment of silence. When she finally finished and let herself out of the penthouse 2 hours later, she found an envelope on the kitchen counter that had not been there before. Inside was her usual payment, plus an extra $200 in cash and a note in sharp, angular handwriting. "For your time. Thank you for your excellent work. DK." Patricia stared at the money, confused and unsettled. She pocketed it anyway. She needed every dollar she could get. But as she rode the bus back to her apartment in Hayward, she could not stop thinking about the way Dong-soo Kwon had looked at her, like she had reached into his chest and stopped his heart with her bare hands. Patricia had been working for Elite Home Services for 8 months, ever since she had responded to a Craigslist ad promising competitive pay for detail-oriented individuals. The reality was less glamorous than the posting suggested: minimum wage plus tips, no benefits, and a supervisor who treated employees like disposable resources. But it was steady work, and Patricia could not afford to be picky. At 26, she was responsible for more than just herself. Her younger brother, Corey, was finishing his last year at San Jose State University, majoring in computer science with a minor in mathematics. He was brilliant, driven, and their parents' greatest pride before they died. 4 years ago, Patricia and Corey's parents had been killed in a car accident on Highway 101. A drunk driver had crossed the median during a rainstorm and hit their Toyota Camry head-on. Their father died instantly. Their mother held on for 3 days in the ICU before her injuries became too much. Patricia had been 22, just graduated from community college with an associate degree in business administration and dreams of eventually opening her own event planning company. Corey had been 18, with a full scholarship to San Jose State and a bright future ahead of him. The scholarship covered tuition, but not living expenses. Not food, not books, not the laptop he needed for his programming classes. Their parents had left behind some savings, but medical bills and funeral costs consumed most of it. What remained went into a college fund for Corey that Patricia refused to touch except for absolute emergencies. So she became the provider, the protector, the parent. She worked 3 jobs: house cleaning during the day, weekend shifts at a coffee shop called Brew Haven in Palo Alto, and occasional catering gigs when she could get them through a friend who ran a small events company. Between the 3 jobs, she pulled in just enough to cover rent on their tiny 2-bedroom apartment in Hayward, Corey's expenses, groceries, and utilities. There was never anything left over. She had not bought new clothes for herself in 2 years. She cut her own hair. She survived on whatever food was about to expire at the coffee shop, taking home day-old pastries and slightly stale bagels. Her social life was non-existent. Dating was a luxury she could not afford, both financially and emotionally. But Corey was thriving, and that was all that mattered. The Kwon penthouse in Atherton was her newest assignment, added to her rotation 6 weeks ago. Her supervisor at Elite Home Services, a perpetually stressed woman named Linda, had called her with the job on a Tuesday morning. "I need you to take on a new client," Linda had said without preamble. "High-end property in Atherton. Pays double our usual rate, but the client is extremely particular. Private, rarely home, expects absolute perfection. Can you handle it? Patricia had been in the middle of scrubbing someone's oven in Lowe's Gatos, her back already aching. What kind of particular? The kind that will notice if a picture frame is a quarter-inch off from where it was before. The kind that has security cameras in every room and actually reviews the footage. The kind that might fire us if you so much as leave a streak on a window. Sounds delightful. It pays $150 per session, twice a week, plus whatever tip he leaves. Are you interested or not? Patricia had done the math in her head. $300 a week extra meant $1,200 a month. That was nearly half her rent. That was Corey's groceries and his textbooks with money left over. I'm interested. Linda had emailed her the address and the security code. She had shown up the following Monday at 9 a.m. sharp, prepared for some entitled tech bro or eccentric venture capitalist. Instead, she had found a penthouse that looked like it belonged in an architecture magazine. Clean lines, expensive materials, minimalist furniture that probably cost more than she made in a year. Everything was in shades of gray, black, and white, with occasional touches of deep blue. It was beautiful and cold and utterly impersonal, like a high-end hotel rather than someone's home. She had cleaned for 4 hours that first day and never saw the owner. He had left a note on the kitchen counter. Please focus on the bathrooms and the main living areas. Do not enter the locked office on the second floor. Thank you. The note had been signed with just the initials, DK. She had not met Dong-Soo Kwon in person until her third visit, when he had come home unexpectedly while she was cleaning the kitchen. He had walked in, stopped short when he saw her, and given her a curt nod. You're the new cleaning service. Yes, sir, Patricia Chen. I'll stay out of your way. He had looked at her for a brief moment, assessing, businesslike, and then nodded again. The kitchen looks good, thank you. Then he had disappeared into his office and stayed there until she left. That had been their only interaction for weeks. He was polite but distant. He left generous tips. He never made special requests or complained about her work. As far as employers went, he was ideal, professional, respectful, and completely uninterested in her as anything other than a service provider. Until the day she tied her hair up. Now, riding the bus home after that strange, charged encounter, Patricia tried to make sense of what had happened. Maybe she had imagined it. Maybe he had just been tired or stressed about work. Maybe that intense stare had meant nothing at all. But the extra $200 in the envelope suggested otherwise. As did the way her heart was still racing, hours later. She pulled out her phone and texted Corey, working late tonight. Leftover pasta in the fridge. Don't forget your algorithms assignment is due tomorrow. His response came immediately, already done. You worry too much. There's Thai food in the fridge too. I grabbed some with my study group. Eat IT. Patricia smiled despite herself. Her baby brother was taking care of her now too. She pocketed the phone and stared out the bus window as the Bay Area landscape rolled past. Strip malls and tech campuses and traffic and overpriced housing developments. She thought about Dong-Soo Kwon's penthouse, about the life he lived in that beautiful, sterile space. She thought about the way he had stared at her. And despite every bit of common sense she possessed, despite knowing that men like him did not see women like her, despite understanding that she could not afford to entertain any foolish thoughts, she could not stop wondering what he had been thinking in that moment. 3 days later, on a Thursday afternoon in early October, Patricia arrived at the Kwon penthouse for her usual cleaning session. The security code worked as always, and she let herself in through the private entrance that led directly to the service elevator. The penthouse was quiet. She called out as she always did, "Hello, Mr. Kwon, it's Patricia from Elite Home Services." No response. She figured he was out, as usual. He kept unpredictable hours, sometimes gone for days on business trips, sometimes working from home, sometimes appearing and disappearing at odd hours. Linda had warned her that his schedule was erratic and that she should just proceed with her work regardless of whether he was home. Patricia set down her caddy of cleaning supplies in the kitchen and began her usual routine. Dust first, Then vacuum, then bathrooms, then kitchen, then floors. She worked methodically, losing herself in the familiar rhythm of the work. She was on the second floor, dusting the bookshelves in Dong-su's private office, the one that was usually locked but had been left open today, when she heard voices rising from the floor below. Male voices, speaking rapidly, angry. She froze, her hand still on the shelf. One voice she recognized as Dong-su's, but it was harder than she had ever heard it. Cold, sharp, dangerous. The other voice was unfamiliar, also male, speaking in a mixture of rapid Korean and accented English. The tone was aggressive, confrontational. Patricia's heart began to pound. She should not be here. She should not be hearing this. She quietly set down her dust cloth and began to tiptoe toward the office door, planning to slip out and hide in the bathroom until whatever this was ended. But as she moved, fragments of the conversation drifted up the stairs, and she could not help but hear them. "Think you can walk away from the family and pretend you're clean?" the stranger was saying, his voice dripping with contempt. "Your father built this empire on blood, Dong-su, on violence, on fear, and you owe us." "I owe you nothing." Dong-su's voice was ice-cold, each word precisely enunciated. "I restructured the business legally. Every asset is accounted for. Every operation is legitimate. You have no claim here, Min-yi." "I have every claim. Your father promised my father." "My father is dead. Your father is dead. The old ways are finished." "Your cousin does not see it that way." The other man's voice dropped to something darker. "He says you stole what was rightfully his. He says you used family connections to build your empire and then cut us out when it became profitable. He wants compensation, or he will make your life very complicated." There was a pause. When Dong-su spoke again, his voice was soft, but somehow that made it more terrifying. "Tell my cousin that if he comes near me or my business again, I will bury him. Not physically. I'm not my father. But I will destroy every financial connection he has. I will expose every illegal operation he's still running. I will make sure he spends the rest of his life in a federal prison. Do you understand me?" "You wouldn't dare." "Try me." The silence that followed was heavy with threat. Patricia's hands were shaking. She had no idea what she had just heard, but every instinct screamed at her to get out. Now, she took a careful step backward, her eyes on the door. And her shoe caught the edge of the area rug. She stumbled, her arms pinwheeling for balance, and her elbow knocked a small picture frame off the side table. It hit the hardwood floor with a loud, shattering crash. The voices downstairs stopped immediately. For one horrible moment, there was complete silence. Then she heard heavy footsteps thundering up the stairs. Patricia's breath caught in her throat. She looked around frantically for somewhere to hide, but it was too late. The office door swung open hard, and Dong-su stood there, his expression a mixture of shock and alarm. Behind him, a stocky man in an expensive leather jacket appeared. He was shorter than Dong-su but broader, with a thick neck and cold eyes that narrowed when they landed on Patricia. "Who the hell is this?" he demanded in English, his accent thick. "She's no one," Dong-su said quickly, moving to partially block the other man's view of her. "Just the cleaning service. She doesn't know anything." The man, Min-yi, she assumed, stepped closer, looking Patricia up and down with open suspicion. She could smell his cologne, something expensive and cloying. "Maybe," he said slowly. "Or maybe she heard too much. Maybe she's a problem." Dong-su's entire body language shifted. He moved fully between them, his posture becoming something protective and dangerous. When he spoke, his voice was deadly quiet. "Touch her, and you will regret it. I will personally make sure of it. Now get out of my house." Min-yi smirked, but there was something uncertain in his eyes now. "This is not over, cousin, not by a long shot." "Yes," Dong-su said, "it is. Leave." For a tense moment, the two men stared at each other. Patricia held her breath, terrified and confused. Finally, Min-yi stepped back, raising his hands in mock surrender. "We'll see," he said. "We'll see how long your protection lasts." He turned and left, but not before shooting Patricia one last threatening look that made her blood run cold. She heard his footsteps descend the stairs, heard the front door open and slam shut. The penthouse fell silent. Dong-soo stood with his back to her for a long moment, his shoulders tense, his hands clenched into fists at his sides. She could see him working to control his breathing. Finally, he turned to face her. For the first time since she had met him, he looked genuinely worried. "Are you okay?" he asked, his voice much gentler than it had been moments ago. Patricia nodded, but her hands were shaking so badly she had to clasp them together. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to eavesdrop. I was just cleaning and I heard." "I know, it's not your fault." He ran a hand through his hair, disturbing its usually perfect style. "How much did you hear?" I don't know, not much, just pieces." She swallowed hard. "Who was that?" "No one you need to worry about." But his expression said otherwise. "Patricia, I need you to forget everything you just heard. Can you do that?" She wanted to ask questions. She wanted to know what kind of man her employer really was, what kind of world she had just glimpsed. But the look in his eyes, concerned, protective, but also warning her not to push, stopped her. "I don't even know what I heard," she said quietly. He studied her face for a long moment, searching for something. Finally, he exhaled slowly. "Good, that's good." He paused. "I'm going to drive you home." "You don't have to." "I do." His tone left no room for argument. "Get your things." Patricia gathered her cleaning supplies in a daze, her hands still trembling slightly as she packed everything into her caddy. Dong-soo waited downstairs, and when she descended the staircase, she found him by the door with his car keys in hand and his phone pressed to his ear. He was speaking rapid Korean, his tone clipped and authoritative. She caught the words security and something that sounded like surveillance, but the rest was incomprehensible to her. He ended the call when he saw her and gestured toward the door. "This way." The parking garage beneath the building housed a collection of expensive vehicles, but Dong-soo led her to a sleek black Audi sedan, understated compared to the Lamborghini and Tesla Roadster parked nearby, but still worth more than Patricia would make in 5 years. He opened the passenger door for her, and she slid in, feeling completely out of place in the leather interior. The car smelled like new car and subtle cologne, and when Dong-soo got in the driver's seat, the space suddenly felt very small. He pulled out of the garage and onto the tree-lined streets of Atherton, where every house was a mansion and every car was a status symbol. They drove in silence for several minutes before he spoke. "What's your address?" She gave it to him, and he input it into the GPS. His eyebrows rose slightly when the estimated drive time appeared, 47 minutes. "You commute an hour each way to clean houses." Patricia shrugged, looking out the window. "It's good money, better than most cleaning jobs." More silence. They merged onto Highway 101, joining the eternal flow of Bay Area traffic. "I'm sorry you were put in that position today," Dong-soo said finally. "It won't happen again." "It's fine," Patricia replied, though her voice was unsteady. "I just clean houses. I'm not part of whatever that was." "You're not," he agreed, "and I'll make sure it stays that way." She wanted to ask him what he meant. She wanted to ask who Min-yi was, what the old family business had been, why someone would threaten him. But something in his posture, the tight grip on the steering wheel, the muscle jumping in his jaw, told her to let it go. They continued in silence through Mountain View, past the Google campus, through Sunnyvale and Milpitas. The urban landscape gradually deteriorated as they moved away from the wealthy enclaves of Silicon Valley and toward the working-class neighborhoods of the East Bay. When they finally pulled up outside her apartment building in Hayward, a tired-looking complex with peeling paint and a broken gate, the contrast between their worlds had never been more stark. Dong-soo looked at the building, then at her. His expression was difficult to read. "You live here?" "It's cheap and close to Corey's campus," she said defensively. "Corey?" "My brother. He's finishing his degree at San Jose State." Something shifted in Dong-soo's expression. "You're supporting him." "We support each other." He nodded slowly, and she thought she saw something like respect in his eyes. She reached for the door handle, but he spoke before she could get out. "Patricia." She turned back. He was looking at her intently, and once again she felt that strange electricity in the air between them. "Be careful over the next few days," he said. "And if anyone approaches you asking questions about me, anyone at all, call me immediately." He pulled a business card from his wallet and wrote a number on the back with a pen from the center console. "This is my personal cell, not my business line. Use it if you need to." She took the card, her fingers brushing against his for just a second. The contact sent a jolt through her that she tried hard to ignore. "You think he'll come after me?" "No," Dong-soo said firmly, "but I don't take chances with people I care about." The words hung in the air between them. People I care about. Patricia's heart did a strange flip in her chest. "You barely know me." His dark eyes held hers. "I know enough." She did not know how to respond to that, so she simply nodded and got out of the car. He waited until she was inside the building before driving away, and she watched his taillights disappear down the street with a confused, fluttering feeling in her chest. Over the next few days, Dong-soo could not get Patricia out of his head. It was not just attraction anymore, though God knew he was attracted to her. It was something deeper, something that had started the moment he watched her tie her hair up and had solidified the instant he saw fear in her eyes. She had been afraid, but she had not run. She had not demanded answers or threatened to go to the police. She had not tried to leverage what she heard for money or protection. She had simply trusted him when he said he would handle it. That trust felt more valuable than anything he had ever been given. He found himself texting her at odd hours. "Are you okay? Did you make it home safely tonight? I'm increasing your rate to 200 per session, non-negotiable. Please take the rest of the week off from the penthouse. I'll pay you anyway." Patricia responded to each message, her texts polite and professional, but he could read the confusion between the lines. She did not understand why he was doing this. Hell, he barely understood it himself. He had spent 33 years building walls around himself. His childhood had taught him that caring about people made you vulnerable, that love was a weakness that could be exploited. His father had ruled through fear, not affection. His mother had been kind but powerless. He had watched his family destroy themselves and others through violence and greed, and he had vowed to be different. But being different had meant being alone. Until now. Patricia, meanwhile, was completely confused. She tried to tell herself that Dong-soo was just being a responsible employer, making sure she was safe after witnessing something she should not have seen. But the frequency of his texts, the concern in his words, the way he had looked at her in the car, none of it felt professional. She tried to focus on her other jobs, on Corey, on anything but the way her heart raced every time her phone buzzed with a new message from him. She told herself it meant nothing. That men like him did not see women like her as anything more than employees or, at best, charity cases. But late at night, when she was alone in her small bedroom, she found herself reading his messages over and over again, studying the words for hidden meaning. "I don't take chances with people I care about." Did he really care about her, or was she just imagining it? On the 6th day after the incident, her phone rang instead of buzzed. His name appeared on the screen, and her stomach flipped. "Hello?" "Patricia." His voice was warm, less formal than usual. "Are you free tomorrow evening?" I have a shift at the coffee shop until 6. "Can you meet me after? There's a cafe in Menlo Park. I'd like to talk to you." Her heart hammered. About what? A pause. About us. Patricia told herself 100 times that she should cancel. That meeting Dong-soo Kwon at a cafe to talk about us was a terrible idea that could only end badly. She was his employee. He was wealthy and powerful and lived in a completely different world. Whatever he wanted to talk about could not possibly lead anywhere good for her. But when her shift at Brew Haven ended at 6, she found herself changing out of her work polo and into the nicest sweater she owned. A soft gray cardigan her mother had given her years ago. She touched up her minimal makeup in the bathroom mirror and tried to tame her curls into something presentable. The cafe Dongsu had suggested was called Satori, a quiet place in Menlo Park that catered to the tech crowd with pour-over coffee and minimalist decor. Patricia took the Caltrain from Palo Alto and walked the remaining blocks, arriving exactly at 7. He was already there, sitting by the window in dark jeans and a charcoal sweater that made him look younger and less intimidating than the suits she usually saw him in. When he saw her walk in, he stood, an old-fashioned gesture that made her chest tighten. "Thank you for coming," he said, pulling out her chair. "Of course," she sat, feeling awkward and out of place, "though I'm not sure what this is about." He smiled slightly. "Let me get you something to drink first. What would you like?" She ordered a latte, and he got the same. While they waited for their drinks, they talked about safe, neutral things, the weather, the traffic, a new restaurant that had opened nearby. It felt strangely easy, like they had known each other much longer than a few months. When the coffee arrived, Dongsu wrapped his hands around his cup and looked at her directly. "I need to be honest with you about something," he said. Patricia's heart rate spiked. "Okay." "That day you tied your hair up in my bathroom," he continued, his dark eyes steady on hers. "Something happened to me. I have not been able to stop thinking about you since." She stared at him, her coffee forgotten. What?" "I know this is inappropriate," he continued. "You work for me technically, and my life is complicated in ways you do not deserve to deal with. But I can't keep pretending I do not feel this. I can't keep acting like you're just another employee when every time I see you, He stopped, running a hand through his hair in frustration. "I'm saying this badly." "No," Patricia whispered. "You're not." He looked at her, hope and uncertainty warring in his expression. "I'm not imagining this, am I? The way it feels when we're in the same room." She wanted to lie. She wanted to protect herself, to maintain the professional boundary that stood between them, to remember all the reasons this was a terrible idea. But she was so tired of being alone, so tired of being strong and practical and sensible. "You're not imagining it," she admitted, her voice barely audible. The relief on his face was unmistakable. He reached across the table slowly, giving her time to pull away, and took her hand in his. His skin was warm, his grip gentle. "I don't know how this works," he said. "I'm not good at this. I've spent my whole life avoiding exactly this kind of complication." "Why?" He was quiet for a moment, considering. "My family, the business I grew up in, it taught me that caring about people makes you vulnerable. That love is a weapon other people use against you, so I built walls. I kept everyone at a distance." He looked down at their joined hands. "Until you." Patricia's throat tightened. "I'm nobody special, Dongsu. I'm a maid who can barely pay rent. You could have anyone." "I don't want anyone. I want you." He said it simply, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. "I want your laugh when something catches you off guard. I want the way you hum while you clean. I want the fierce look in your eyes when you talk about your brother. I want all of it." Tears pricked at Patricia's eyes. No one had ever said anything like that to her before. She had been the caretaker, the provider, the responsible one for so long that she had forgotten what it felt like to be wanted for herself. "This is crazy," she whispered. "Probably. We're from completely different worlds." "I don't care. Your life is dangerous. That man who came to your house." "I'll handle it. I'll handle all of it." He squeezed her hand. "All I need to know is if you feel this too, if there's a chance." Patricia looked at him, really looked at him, at the uncertainty in his usually confident expression, at the vulnerability he was showing her despite everything he had said about walls and distance, at the way he held her hand like it was something precious. She thought about her practical, responsible self, the one who worked 3 jobs and never took risks and always chose safety over happiness. And she thought about the girl she used to be before her parents died, the one who believed in possibilities. "I feel it too," she said. "I don't know what it means or how it could work, but I feel it too." Dongsu's smile transformed his entire face, making him look younger and lighter. He brought her hand to his lips and pressed a gentle kiss to her knuckles. Then we'll figure out the rest together. They stayed at the cafe until it closed, talking about everything and nothing. He told her about growing up as the American-born son of Korean immigrants who ran a logistics company that was really a front for organized crime. About watching his father build an empire on fear and violence. About the moment he decided to break away and go legitimate, even though it meant cutting ties with most of his family. She told him about her parents, about the accident, about becoming Corey's guardian when she was barely more than a kid herself. About her dreams of running her own business someday, dreams she had put on hold to survive. When they finally left, he drove her home again. This time, when they pulled up outside her apartment, he walked her to the door. "Can I see you again?" he asked. "Not as your employer, as whatever this is." "Yes," she said, smiling despite herself. "I'd like that." He reached out and tucked a loose curl behind her ear, his fingers lingering on her cheek. For a moment, she thought he might kiss her, and her heart hammered in anticipation. But instead, he stepped back, giving her space. "Good night, Patricia." "Good night." She watched him walk back to his car, and when she got inside her apartment, she found Corey on the couch with his laptop, working on code. "You look happy," he observed, glancing up from his screen. "What happened?" Patricia touched her cheek, where Dong-Su's fingers had been, and smiled. "I think I just started something either really wonderful or really stupid." Corey grinned. "My money's on wonderful." She hoped he was right. For 3 weeks, Patricia existed in a strange, beautiful bubble. She and Dong-Su saw each other whenever their schedules allowed. Dinners at quiet restaurants, walks through Stanford campus, late-night phone calls that stretched past midnight. He was surprisingly easy to talk to, with a dry sense of humor that caught her off guard and a thoughtfulness that made her feel truly seen for the first time in years. He did not push her physically, despite the obvious attraction between them. He held her hand. He kissed her forehead when they said goodbye. He looked at her like she was something precious. But he kept a careful distance, and she appreciated it, even as part of her wished he would close the gap. She stopped cleaning his penthouse. They both agreed it would be too weird, but he insisted on continuing to pay her the rate he had promised, calling it a consulting fee for helping him find a new service. She used the money to finally replace her broken laptop and buy Corey new shoes. Life felt, for the first time in years, manageable, maybe even good. She should have known it would not last. It was a Thursday evening in late October. Patricia was finishing her shift at Brew Haven, wiping down the espresso machine and counting out the register while her coworker mopped the floors. The cafe closed at 8, and by 8:15, she was locking the door behind her and walking toward the Caltrain station. The streets of Palo Alto were busy with students and young professionals. The sidewalk cafes still full despite the autumn chill. Patricia pulled her jacket tighter and checked her phone. A text from Dong-Su, "Dinner tomorrow, I'll cook." She smiled and was typing a response when a black SUV pulled up beside her at the curb. Her first instinct was to ignore it and keep walking, but then the rear window rolled down and a familiar voice called out. "Patricia Chen, get in the car, we need to talk." She looked over and felt her blood turn to ice. It was Min-Yi, the man from Dong-Su's penthouse, the one who had threatened her employer, the one who had looked at her like she was a problem to be solved. "No," she said firmly, picking up her pace. The SUV kept pace with her. "It's not a request." The front passenger door opened, and a second man stepped out, tall, broad-shouldered, expressionless. He walked toward her with purpose. Patricia looked around desperately. The street was busy, but no one was paying attention. Just another car, just another conversation. Nothing unusual. The man grabbed her arm, not violently, but firmly enough that she could not pull away. "Don't make a scene," he said quietly. "Get in the car, answer a few questions, and you go home safe. Fight, and this gets complicated." Her heart hammered. She thought about screaming, about fighting, but the man's grip was iron strong, and his expression promised that resistance would not end well for her. She got in the car. They drove north, away from Palo Alto, through Mountain View and into San Francisco. No one spoke. Patricia's mind raced through scenarios, each worse than the last. They were going to hurt her. They were going to kill her. They were going to use her to get to Dong-su. After 30 minutes that felt like hours, the SUV pulled into an empty parking garage in the Soma district. The driver parked in a dark corner far from any cameras or foot traffic. Minyi turned in his seat to face her. He looked older than she remembered, with gray at his temples and lines around his mouth. His eyes were cold. "You've gotten close to my cousin," he said without preamble. "That's unfortunate for you." Patricia forced her voice to stay steady. "I'm just his housekeeper. I don't know anything about his business." "Liar." Minyi pulled out his phone and showed her a photo. It was from 2 nights ago. Her and Dong-su having dinner at a small Italian place in Redwood City. The photo was zoomed in, clearly taken from across the street with a telephoto lens. In it, Dong-su was holding her hand across the table, looking at her with unmistakable affection. "You're not his housekeeper," Minyi said. "You're his weakness." Panic clawed at Patricia's throat. "What do you want?" "Dong-su stole from my family. He built his empire on connections and resources that belonged to all of us, then cut us out when the business went legitimate. He owes us compensation." Minyi swiped to another photo on his phone. This one showed Corey walking across the San Jose State campus, backpack slung over one shoulder, laughing at something on his phone. Patricia's heart stopped. "Your brother," Minyi said conversationally. 22 years old, computer science major, lives at 2847 Harding Avenue, apartment 3B, walks to campus every morning at 8:15. Very predictable schedule." "Don't," Patricia whispered, her voice breaking. "Please don't." "That depends on you." Minyi leaned closer. "You're going to deliver a message to Dong-su. Tell him he has 2 weeks to transfer 30% of Hanul Global's U.S. operations to me. Clean, legal, fully documented. If he refuses, or if he goes to the police, or if he tries any of his usual tactics." He tapped Corey's photo. "Your little brother will have a very unfortunate accident. Understand?" Tears burned in Patricia's eyes, but she refused to let them fall. "He'll never agree to that." "Then I suggest you be very convincing." Minyi's smile was cruel. "Dong-su cares about you. Use that. Make him understand what's at stake." "You're a monster." "I'm a businessman, just like my cousin." He nodded to the driver. "Take her back." They drove her to the same corner in Palo Alto, where they had picked her up and pushed her out onto the sidewalk. The SUV disappeared into traffic before she could even process what had happened. Patricia stood there, shaking uncontrollably, and pulled out her phone with trembling hands. She stared at Dong-su's contact for a long time before finally pressing call. He answered on the first ring. "Patricia, I was just thinking about you." "I need to see you," she said, her voice cracking. "Right now, please." His tone changed immediately. "What happened? Are you okay?" "No, I'm not okay. Can you meet me somewhere? Somewhere private." "I'll come to you. Where are you?" She gave him her location, and 15 minutes later, his Audi pulled up. He got out, took one look at her face, and pulled her into his arms. She broke down completely, sobbing into his chest while he held her and murmured reassurances in Korean and English. When she finally calmed down enough to speak, she told him everything. Dong-su listened to Patricia's account without interrupting, his expression growing darker with every word. By the time she finished, his jaw was clenched so tight she could see the muscle jumping. "Get in the car," he said quietly. "Where are we going?" "Somewhere safe." He drove them to a high-rise office building in downtown San Francisco, using a key card to access the private parking garage. They took an elevator to the 20th floor, and he led her into a suite of offices that were dark and empty at this hour. "I keep this space for private meetings," he explained, turning on lights. "No one knows about it except my lawyer and my head of security. We can talk here." He sat her down on a leather couch and disappeared into an adjoining room, returning with a bottle of water and a blanket that he wrapped around her shoulders. Then he pulled out his phone and made a series of rapid calls in Korean. Patricia could not understand the words, but she understood the tone: cold, commanding, absolute. He was mobilizing something: resources, people, power. When he finally hung up, he sat down beside her and took her hand. "I'm going to fix this," he said, "but I need you to trust me completely. Can you do that?" "What are you going to do?" she asked, her voice small. "What I should have done the moment Minyi threatened me the first time. End this permanently." "He has people watching Corey." "Not anymore. I just sent a security team to your brother's apartment. They'll keep him safe without him even knowing they're there." He cupped her face in his hands. "No one is going to hurt him. No one is going to hurt you. I promise." "How can you promise that?" Minyi said. "Minyi is a coward who hides behind threats because he has no real power. But I do." His expression was fierce. "I have spent years preparing for the possibility that my family's past would catch up with me. I have contingencies. I have leverage. And I have no intention of letting him use you against me." Over the next 3 days, Dong-soo worked with the focused intensity of a man waging war. He contacted family allies in Seoul, distant cousins and old business associates who still respected his father's name, if not his father's methods. He hired the best corporate investigators money could buy. He activated legal teams across 3 countries. And slowly, methodically, he built a trap. Patricia stayed with him during this time, at his insistence. He did not want her going home, did not want her anywhere Minyi could reach her. She called in sick to her jobs and told Corey she was helping a friend with a family emergency. He accepted the explanation without question, having no idea that armed guards were watching him 24 hours a day. On the 4th day, Dong-soo sat Patricia down and showed her what he had found. "Minyi has been embezzling from family operations for years," he explained, spreading documents across the conference table. "Money laundering, tax fraud, illegal gambling operations in 3 states. He's been using family connections to run a shadow empire, and he's been very, very sloppy about covering his tracks." "How did you get all this?" "I've been collecting it for years. Insurance, in case I ever needed it." He pulled out another folder. "This is evidence of his current operations, enough to put him away for 20 years minimum, enough to get him excommunicated from what's left of the family organization, enough to destroy him completely." Patricia stared at the files. "You've been planning this." "I've been preparing for it. There's a difference." He closed the folders. "I arranged a meeting with him, tomorrow in Seattle, neutral territory. I'm going to give him a choice: walk away from me, from you, from everything I've built. Or I send all of this to the FBI and to the family council in Seoul." "What if he doesn't take the deal?" "He will, because he knows that if he doesn't, he loses everything. His freedom, his money, his life, probably. The family council does not look kindly on members who bring federal attention to their operations." Dong-soo's certainty should have been reassuring, but Patricia could not shake her fear. "And if something goes wrong?" He pulled her close, wrapping his arms around her. "Nothing will go wrong. I've done this before, Patricia. I've faced down worse men than Minyi. He's desperate and stupid, and that makes him predictable." She wanted to believe him. She needed to believe him. "Promise me you'll be careful," she whispered. "I promise." He kissed her forehead. "And when this is over, I'm taking you somewhere far away from all of this. Somewhere we can just be normal for a while." "I'd like that." The next morning, Dong-soo flew to Seattle. Patricia waited in the San Francisco office, surrounded by his security team, checking her phone obsessively for updates. The meeting was scheduled for 2 p.m. Pacific time. At 2:15, her phone buzzed, "With him now." At 2:45, "It's done." At 3:30, Dong-soo called her. "He took the deal," he said, and she could hear the exhaustion in his voice. "He and his people will be out of the country by tomorrow night. It's over." Patricia closed her eyes, relief flooding through her so intensely she felt lightheaded. "Really?" "Really? You're safe. Corey's safe. We're safe." She laughed, the sound half-sob. "Thank you. God, Dong-soo, thank you. I'll be home in 4 hours. Wait for me." Always. When Dong-soo finally returned to San Francisco, he came straight to Patricia's apartment in Hayward. She had insisted on going home, needing the familiarity of her own space after the chaos of the past week. He had reluctantly agreed, but only after confirming that his security team would maintain surveillance of the building. She was waiting by the window when his car pulled up. The moment she saw him get out, she was running. She met him halfway across the parking lot and threw herself into his arms. He caught her easily, holding her tight while she cried into his shoulder, relief and fear and gratitude all pouring out at once. "It's over," he murmured, stroking her hair. "You're safe, Corey's safe, I promise." They stood there in the parking lot for a long time, just holding each other while the autumn wind picked up around them. Finally, Patricia pulled back enough to look at him. His face was lined with exhaustion, his usually perfect hair disheveled, but his eyes were warm. "Come inside," she said. Her apartment was small and shabby compared to his penthouse, with second-hand furniture and peeling paint, but he settled onto her worn couch like it was the most comfortable place in the world. She made tea, cheap grocery store stuff, nothing like the premium brands he probably drank, and sat beside him. "Tell me what happened," she said. So he did. He explained the meeting, the evidence he had presented, the look on Minyi's face when he realized he had been outmaneuvered. The quiet conversation that followed, where Dong-soo had laid out the terms clearly, leave or lose everything. "He tried to bluster," Dong-soo said. "Threatened me, threatened you. But when I showed him proof that I'd already sent copies of everything to a lawyer with instructions to release it if anything happened to me or mine, he folded. He's a bully, Patricia, and bullies always fold when someone stands up to them." "I was so scared," she admitted. "I know," he took her hand. "I'm sorry you were dragged into this, into my mess." "It's not your fault." "It is, though, if you hadn't gotten close to me. Then I'd still be working 3 jobs and barely scraping by, never taking a risk, never letting anyone in." She squeezed his hand. "I don't regret this, Dong-soo, any of it." He looked at her, really looked at her, with an intensity that made her breath catch. "Why did you do all this for me?" she asked softly. "Risk your business, call in favors, spend a fortune on security. Why?" Dong-soo set down his tea and cupped her face in his hands, the gesture achingly gentle. "Because from the moment you tied your hair up in my bathroom, you became the only thing that mattered to me," he said. "I know it sounds crazy. I know we come from completely different worlds. I know this happened fast, but I don't care about any of that. I care about you. The way you laugh at terrible jokes, the way you hum when you think no one's listening, the fierce way you love your brother, the strength it takes to keep going when life keeps knocking you down. All of it. I care about all of it." Tears slipped down Patricia's cheeks. "I've been alone for so long." "I know. I've been so scared to let anyone in." "I know that too. But her voice broke. "I think I'm falling for you. God help me, but I think I already have." The smile that broke across Dong-soo's face was like sunrise. "Say that again." "I'm falling for you." "Again." She laughed through her tears. "I'm falling for you, Dong-soo Kwon." "Good," he whispered, pulling her close. "Because I've already fallen for you, Patricia Chen." And then he kissed her. It was soft at first, tentative, like they were both afraid to break the fragile thing building between them. But then Patricia wrapped her arms around his neck and kissed him back with everything she had been holding inside, all her fear and loneliness and desperate hope, and the world fell away. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Dong-soo rested his forehead against hers. "Stay with me tonight," he said. "Not like that, just stay. I don't want to let you go." "Okay," she whispered. They fell asleep on her small couch, tangled together under a cheap blanket, and it was the best sleep either of them had had in years. 6 months later, Patricia Chen stood in the living room of a beautiful townhouse in Los Altos, California, and could not quite believe it was real. The townhouse was hers, legally, officially hers. Dong-soo had insisted on putting it in her name only, no co-ownership, no strings attached. Just a gift, he had said, though gift seemed like an inadequate word for a $2 million property. I can't accept this, she had protested when he first showed her the listing. You can and you will, he had replied firmly. You and Corey need a safe place to live, a real home, not that apartment with the broken heater and the mold in the bathroom. Let me do this for you, please. She had cried, then she had said yes. Now, unpacking boxes in the bright, spacious living room, she felt like she was living someone else's life. The townhouse had 3 bedrooms, 2.5 baths, a modern kitchen that made her want to learn to cook, and a small backyard with a lemon tree. It was beautiful and bright and safe, and every time she walked through the door, she wanted to pinch herself. Where do you want the books? Corey called from the hallway, struggling with a box. Office, she called back. Second room on the right. Her brother had graduated from San Jose State 2 weeks ago with a 3.9 GPA and multiple job offers. He had accepted a position at a tech startup in Mountain View, with a starting salary that made Patricia want to cry with pride. He was thriving, independent, building his own life. She did not have to worry about him anymore. She had quit all 3 of her jobs, not because Dong-soo had asked her to, but because he had helped her start her own business, a luxury home staging company called Refined Spaces. Using her years of experience in high-end homes and her natural eye for design, she had built a client list that was already more than she could handle alone. She had hired 2 employees and was considering a 3rd. She was her own boss, building something that was truly hers. And Dong-soo? Dong-soo was still the iron wolf in the boardroom, still commanding and untouchable to the rest of the world. But when he came home to her, and he did most nights, though they maintained separate residences for now, he was just a man who loved a woman with quiet, fierce devotion. They had taken things slow after that first kiss, building trust, learning each other. He had introduced her to his mother, who lived in Seattle and who had hugged Patricia and cried, and told her son in Korean that he had finally done something right. Patricia had introduced him to Corey, who had been skeptical at first, but eventually came around when he saw how happy his sister was. Hey, Dong-soo's voice came from the doorway. I brought lunch. She turned to find him standing there in jeans and a casual shirt, holding bags from her favorite Thai place. He looked relaxed, younger without the suit and the corporate armor. You're supposed to be at work, she said, smiling. I own the company. I can leave when I want. He set the food on the kitchen counter and pulled her into his arms. Besides, I wanted to see you. You saw me this morning. And now I'm seeing you again. Problem. She laughed and kissed him. No problem. They ate lunch on the floor of the empty living room, surrounded by boxes, talking about everything and nothing. He told her about a new shipping contract with a Japanese manufacturer. She told him about a potential client who wanted to stage a $5 million mansion in Woodside. I'm proud of you, he said suddenly. She looked up surprised. For what? For building this, your business, your life. You could have let me just take care of everything. A lot of people would have, but you're still fighting to make your own way. I've been taking care of myself for a long time, she said. It's hard to stop. I know, and I love that about you. He reached over and tucked a curl behind her ear, the gesture achingly familiar now. But you know you don't have to do it alone anymore, right? I'm here, for whatever you need. Her throat tightened. I know. Good. That evening, they sat on the back patio of the townhouse, watching the sun set over the Bay Area hills. The sky turned gold and pink and purple, and the air smelled like lemons and summer coming. Dong-soo reached over and took her hand, lacing his fingers through hers. Do you ever regret it? He asked quietly. Getting tangled up in my mess. Patricia looked at him, this man who had fought for her, protected her, loved her without hesitation or reservation. This man who had seen her at her most ordinary and treated her like she was extraordinary. This man who had changed her entire life with his quiet, fierce devotion. Not for a single second, she said. He smiled and pulled her close, pressing a kiss to her forehead, then her cheek, then her lips. I love you, he said, simple, direct, true. I love you too. They sat there together as the sky darkened and the first stars appeared. Two people from completely different worlds who had found something rare and precious in each other. Dong-soo had spent his whole life building walls, keeping people at a distance, believing that caring made you weak. But loving Patricia had taught him that the opposite was true. She made him stronger, braver, better. Patricia had spent years believing that she had to be strong alone, that asking for help was weakness, that happiness was a luxury she could not afford. But being with Dong-soo had taught her that strength came in many forms, and that letting someone in did not make her any less capable. For the first time in both of their lives, they were home. And it had all started with a simple gesture, tying up her hair in his bathroom, unaware that she was about to change everything. "What are you thinking about?" Patricia asked, noticing his distant smile. "That day," he said, "when you tied your hair up." She laughed. "You really lost all focus, didn't you?" "Completely and utterly," he grinned. "Best thing that ever happened to me." She snuggled closer, resting her head on his shoulder. "Me too." As the night settled around them, warm and quiet and full of possibility, they both knew that this was just the beginning. There would be challenges ahead: his complicated family, her growing business, the normal struggles of building a life together. But they would face it all together. And that made all the difference.